Welcome everyone to this evening's conversation, Creating Tomorrow, how we can shape Black history today. As we gather here, we invite you to embark on a transformative journey focused on not just celebrating our rich history, but actively participating in it. In a world that often emphasizes the past, we believe it's time to shift our energy towards building a future filled with innovation, empowerment, and unity. Today, we'll explore how everyone of us has the power to shape our legacy and contribute meaningfully to our collective future. We'll dive into some key themes such as redefining legacy in our lives, understanding the profound impact of future focused mindset, and harnessing the power of storytelling to inspire change. Together, we'll discuss the importance of community collaboration and identify actionable steps that each of us can take to foster a progressive and meaningful future. That being said, we're ready to get this party started. And as always, I like to start off with thought provoking questions. And like I said, this is January 31st. If you believe in Valentine's Day, I mean, go ahead and get your stuff squared away. But other than that, it is the beginning tomorrow of Black History Month. So I want to ask a question, gentlemen, just to get your thoughts on it. When it comes down to things like Black History Month, Native American History, Indigenous People Day, things of that nature. Like, what are your personal thoughts pertaining to holidays or time frames to celebrate ethnic history? Um, so yeah, let me just put that out there. Come on, man.
That was for you, Gary.
I guess I'll go first because Unc said he was gonna go first on most of these questions, so I was just waiting for him to get started.
No, I said I was not.
Oh,
Exact opposite,
I just
brother.
thought about it. My bad. My
Yeah,
bad. I
that's what a
misheard. My bad.
Giants fan would say.
But so I feel like if we just leaving it up to the people, like what is the purpose, right? Why are we setting aside the month for Black history, Native American history, so forth, so far. I know we know the history. Native Americans know the history, but when we look at our society, it's hard for me to really accept what I mean by know the history. We know like the things that some of the things that our people have had to endure to get to the point we are today. But I feel like as a nation, for it to be a nationally recognized celebration, our nation does a good job at pretty much telling us to forget it. These are your highlights. Remember your highlights, but forget the rest of it. And so, to me, it feels disingenuous. But I think we can do better ourselves with getting information out there, with getting the history out there, or with promoting a better future for us. And what better time to do that than when you know we're on the forefront of our own minds, which is the February Black History Month. Um, that's how I look at it.
So, Black History Month is February, which is the shortest month of the freaking year, man. And it's cold. Like, man, why we can't get like June or something, man? But anyway, just to be honest, like for real, I like it. I like I like it for what I think my perception of these different holidays are, right? So for me, I just see them on the surface level, and that's it. I see it as people celebrating their culture and nothing deeper, right? So when it's Indigenous People Month and stuff like that, I like to go out or I like to cut on the TV or TikTok or something, and it's a whole bunch of Indigenous people celebrating their culture. I like to see that. When it's Native American History Month, I like to see those people doing what they do. Whenever it's Hispanic Heritage Month, because I'm a type of person, I enjoy learning about other different cultures. Been in the military for 20 years, I got exposed to so many different types of people. Even like right here, the military, in some sense, brought all of us together. Coaches, are you from Georgia? Are you from Georgia? Okay, coaches from Georgia, Gaddy's from New York, and darn it, Roland is from Michigan. And I'm from Virginia. So we're all from even different parts of that. So I like learning about different cultures. So for me, if I'm just looking at it from a surface level, I like the fact that there's a time of the year where there is a focus on a certain ethnic group or certain culture, and it gives everybody an opportunity to learn more about it. Yes, can you get on YouTube at any time or TikTok and type in any of these subjects right here and learn more about it? Absolutely. But if you live closer to or like around a certain city or you around a certain group, then you may have the opportunity to go and be part of some of these things. Indigenous People Day, they may have something to come to your town. You may go and be able to taste some of the food and be involved in the culture. So for me, on the surface level is what I'm talking about, just the surface level, and these people coming together and celebrating their culture. I like it. So that's my personal thoughts on these.
I used to feel like Unc. I used to enjoy it. I used to like it. Because I would read Carter G. Woodson's books and see what he had to say about it. Since he established it when it was Black History Week, and then you went 2 weeks, and then so forth, so on. Then they made it a month, and I used to think like, man, this is what we need. But I think it is some of what we need as people, as a people, as to be honored in any period of time. You think like, man, I like that. But then when you see what they force feed you, it's like, okay, how many times? I don't want to hear that I had a dream. I don't want to hear about the peanut. I don't want to hear about the street light. I don't want to hear about the same rhetoric that we've always been taught, because in our minds, this is all we have done. And because I look at it more or less as, I think someone in the chat said, it should be like an all around, all year round thing. I think this is just like the education system. It's just it's a tool. But if the parents at home don't continue to teach, don't continue to instill values and things of that nature that come from who we are as a people into the children, then they gonna forget about it, and they just gonna remember, oh, February 1st, and they just gonna remember Black History Month or Native American History Month or whomever it is month or time frame. And when you are stuck to a time frame about your people, any other people you look at, they are speaking and talking about their heritage anytime you get to talk to them. And it's a positive, because like, man, these people actually know who they are. They know where they're from. And that's where this should be able to catapult us to a point where we do desire to learn even more. So we realize that 1619 is not when we were established. It was when we were established here in America. So we have a previous history and send us back to even further than that, and just continue to learn. I think knowledge is one of those things that gets addictive. And when you get into it, you start to say, man, I want to know more and more about who I am and where we're from, instead of just the same rhetoric that comes out February 1st through the 28th or 29th, depending on the year.
Yeah, I appreciate all of this, and I'm liking all of it. And I add to what you're saying. I agree, knowledge can be addictive. I think the problem that we have is that we never pursue wisdom. We just pursue knowledge. So we spew a whole lot of information, but we do absolutely nothing with it. I'm liking what everybody's saying. I do agree with what you guys said, but I also kind of I agree with what you said, but I'm gonna ask this question: like, do I need to wait to these times to become curious about another person's culture? And so that's kind of like my position, because if I need somebody else to tell me because they deemed the thing to be a holiday or deemed this month to be a thing or whatever the case may be, if I need them to tell me a thing for me to become curious about the thing, then that definitely is disingenuous, like Gaddy said. But then I also view it from the perspective of like it's kind of like, and I don't remember who said like the school system, but it is like a form of conditioning. You look forward to February because you're going to have these festivals. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to do this. But you got a whole 11 months that you do absolutely nothing. So now it just becomes a thing. And it's, I don't know. Like I said, I struggle with the notion Because I do remember when we was in the army, you had different celebrations and you had these things that happen and these luncheons that would take place, and we would go to these luncheons just because. But by that same token, I'm like, for what? Like, why do I need to go to a luncheon for this particular thing? Like, I eat every day. Do are we only going to do it on this particular time? So that's kind of like my thoughts, and I want to bring everybody else's thoughts because I see some pretty good thoughts in there. But before I do so, I need to correct the error. Lisa Keys, good to see you and welcome. Shell, good to see you. Welcome. Adrian Artist and Adrian Walter, the Adrian sisters, good to see you and welcome. I think I skipped over Lisa by accident. It wasn't intentional, so I wanted to make sure I brought it out there. Um, Nadella said, while I appreciate the effort of recognition, these should be a part of regular school curriculum and there wouldn't be a need for a holiday. I absolutely agree.
All
Um,
right. Hold on. Oh, go
sure.
ahead. But I want to say something to that.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So when we're talking about these different cultures, how many different cultures are we including in this? Because we put everybody's curriculum in there, then all we're doing at the end of the day is just teaching, you know what I mean? So like, do we include Asian? Do we include, all the Asians? Do we include all the blacks, every different type of black, every different type of white, every different type of Native American? You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is I understand it, but to how many people are we recognizing if we're asking for it to be part of the school curriculum?
I, I like that question, and I had a thought already. So when you asked that question, it just fell in line. But I believe when we do a designated time time period, right? So a forced recognition to me means that there's something that needs to be corrected. That means there's a I don't want to say a, a non-satisfactory of recognition for the people, the diversity in this country, right? And so to say that we need Black History Month means that Black people are being underappreciated. And so we have to stop what we're doing and recognize them, right? But so it goes back to the whole, it should be a part of the curriculum. It should be a part of American culture. And you say how far, as far as it needs to go, is that we understand that this is a part of American history. All right. Now we're talking about Asian history, maybe Asian American history, because how far of Asian history or China history or Japan history correlates to American history. You get what I'm saying? We learned about the different dynasties in China. We learned about the Roman Empire history. We learned about all these other histories, right? And nobody asks, why do we learn about these nations that are not American history? But we can't fully teach American history as it equates to every culture that represents American history. You get what I'm saying? So do we teach about every black that affected American history? Do we teach about Native American? Yes, because it's a part of American history. So that's how I feel about it. So and not to sound as if it's a argumentative stance, but that's just what I think. If we fully teach American history, we got I'm trying to understand. We got 13 years of school, but it's the same three events that Roland just brought up every year in February. 28 days, but I go from slave ships to Harriet Tubman to Martin to I Have a Dream to Welcome to Barack Obama. And of
But
course it went on
somewhere
Barack
in
Obama.
between there, well, never mind. We're not there yet. I'll wait.
Well, to that point, I agree with that. I think a lot of times, and I've always said this, we don't necessarily come up with great answers because we don't necessarily ask great questions. Um, I think part of the problem is a lot of times when we think about this, we think about in one school year. It should be a progressive learning cycle of history. Like at some point, you stop learning history, but the question becomes why? Because you ran out of history to teach. I beg to differ. I think if history was a continuation all the way through, getting deeper into understanding history in its entirety, then I think we have the opportunity to capture every culture that exists under America. Because again, when I was growing up, I don't know about you guys, we were taught that America was a melting pot society. So why not we melt the pot so that we can actually get everybody's understanding? Like I really want to know, like some great things that other cultures have done as well as our culture. I don't think we need to limit. And again, this is just me. I don't sit on no committee. I don't sit on no board, and I definitely don't work in the education department per se. Um, but I think because it stops, studying history, right? To such a degree it stops. I think that's where the limitation exists. But the question really is, can we extend the entirety of teaching history all the way throughout so that you can get more history? And again, it's not to create hatred. I think part of the reason why some people appear to be angry or whatever the case may be is because they feel as though like you teach history, but what you teach is a lot one-sided. It neglects and rejects certain, and you only get in certain aspects of history that say this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing. So you paint an entire picture of this group of people, but yet you pick about five of them out there and say, okay, these are the pioneers. No, it's a lot more than that, right? And again, I think that exists in all cultures. Like, let's not just talk about one person from one particular ethnic group that we celebrate right around the same time every year and say that person is no. Like, it's a lot of people that can be uncovered. It's a lot of things that can be uncovered when it comes down to school curriculum, but I just don't think the right questions are being asked. Just my thoughts. All right, brother Abe said, I appreciate it and I respect it because these culture celebrations provide the opportunity to recognize the complexities and richness of each cultural identity. Yeah, I can agree with that as well. Let's see. We should celebrate all year round. We don't need a designated date to acknowledge ourselves and those like us. Absolutely. I think this answer right here, I really love. And Roland, I know you wrapped this in what you were saying, but I seen when she said it, and I was excited to get to it because I really think this is the big problem. The big problem is that we don't teach our culture at home. We leave kids now to the cell phone, to the internet, to the TV, and then that becomes the babysitter while we do all these other great and wonderful things. We marry our jobs and forget about our families, and then at the end of the day, we're left to the school system. We leave the school system to raise our kids and teach our kids about who we are, and then we get confused when we're upset. I say it that way. We get upset when our children have no idea of who they are, and then they try to be like somebody else. That's a parenting fault, not a school fault. Oh, I'm throwing everybody in the bus today, bro. I
I
ain't
mean, that's the truth.
right.
You know what I mean? That's 100% the truth.
Yeah,
Can't blame the school system. I
yeah,
understand that they're there, but at the same time, it's our responsibility as parents to input and to teach. You know what I mean?
Right.
And at the end of the day, if we want to be honest about it, and this might not be the popular thing to say, but some why are people trusting other people with teaching their kids? Like, we talk a lot in the Black community about what we know and what we don't know in the education system, right? In general, I'm an educator, have been for 8 years. However, there's now a big push to um, for the home life to do what they can do. And I understand there's a lot of different things that's going on. I'm not taking away any of that, but I am saying that there is a way to do it. Um, in theory, it's not hard at all. But I understand that it can be a challenge because it's a new way of thinking. When you're talking about, because at the end of the day, if you look at the education system and the type of people who are in the education system, most of them are not Black. It's predominantly white female who is teaching in the public education system, and it is what it is, for whatever reason. So these are the people who are teaching and training. So if these are not the people that you want to teach your children, then you have to figure out an alternative way to input the information that you want into your children.
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm glad that you and Dwayne brought this out because I think it's not the education systems to educate your children.
Their
It's the
education
education
is doing
system
what it's supposed to do.
it's their job to indoctrinate your children.
Mhm.
Education should
Yes,
be
sir.
left up to the parents, like Coach was saying, because it's my job to instill in them who they are, not the school, because the school has a curriculum and the curriculum funnels them towards a certain outcome. And that's exactly. So when it comes to culture, when it comes to who they are as individuals and their person, I'm not expecting my child to learn about the my Chinese neighbor next door. What the Chinese now they're Chinese American and so forth and so on. So what we have is we go to school and we have a bunch of people who think they're smart, but they walk around in ignorant bliss because they think, oh, I know this person because I got a neighbor and I go to the Chinese restaurant. And so now I see it on TV. So now I know about them instead of just having a mere conversation or reading a book, picking up a book and learning about these people.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And to that point, I mean, I should be responsible for teaching my children about our family and our culture. They go to school to learn about others. And then that way, once they start learning about others, they aren't confused. But I do have another question I want to ask you guys before we really get into it. Like, do you believe the concept of Black History Month unintentionally limits the significance of Black contribution?
Yes. I don't think it's unintentional, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only word I disagree with in that statement is unintentional. Well, and so it depends on when you say intentional. Are we saying like who we saying that the intention is on or not on? You know, if we're saying on the school systems, what they teach, I think is intentional, right? Because like we said, is everything that we peel apart in our history when it comes to education, you come to I find out for almost everything we've learned from math to science, everything there's always been a as popular alternate theory or as heavily researched alternate theory to almost everything that's there. But there's a storyline that follows what actually makes it into the curriculum. Is the majority is given by the same hands of 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 I don't want to use the wrong words. It sound wrong, but it's the same people research, the same scientists research, the same mathematicians that come up every time, right? This and so you deal with that, but you're like this whole time this other person was just as credible when when these theories came out. So why weren't we taught both ways or both theories? Why are we taught this is the way? So when I look at it, everything in our education system is intentional. Um, and so I would say even down to that statement.
I don't know. I don't know if I am versed enough on the subject to have an opinion. So I'm going to stand down on this question. I honestly do not know.
Yeah. It's because I'm part of me part of me is here with exactly what they said. But then I change the dynamics of the conversation and I look at what I am doing for myself, but yet somebody else may feel rejected, neglected, and excluded. But I wasn't intentionally doing it to them. I was intentionally doing it for me. So when I change the dynamics and look at it that way, again, it's not like I'm disagreeing with what you guys said. But when I change the dynamics and look at it that way, now the question becomes more about intentionality. And if I assumed, because we see it all the time, if I assume intentionality, then I can play the blame game about what I did to this person, even though my actions weren't directed toward. You guys understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like I'm really trying to toss this idea around because I want to make sure that sometimes, and I get it, there are instances of blatant obviousness. But I also believe that there are instances where you can perceive there wasn't intentionality, but based upon the obviousness of, this information over here or this evidence over here, we can time together and say it's all, a ploy. So that's why I'm asking the question. And again, not disagreeing with you guys, right? Because there are things that we all know that we can say, okay, that was intentional. I get that thing right there. But does that mean that this thing over here is intentional and this thing over here is intentional? We can conclude that because of the indoctrination, like Roland mentioned. But even though we can conclude a thing, that does not necessarily mean we have the evidence to conclude it. We just have the evidence of what we know on this hand. So no right or wrong answer. I'm just kind of curious of what you guys thought there. And I'm seeing some people had some other strong opinions as well, which is perfectly fine. I got it. And whether it's yes or no, again, it was a thought-provoking, opinionated question. So that being said, as you guys see where we are in this conversation, again, make sure that you hit that like button and make sure that you share it because we're going to start cranking this thing out. So we're going to start off with redefining legacy. And I think that's important to start with because, again, I love the conversation about family and things of that nature. So, gentlemen, that said, how do you personally define legacy and what actions can be taken to start building it? Again, how do you personally define legacy and what action can be taken to start building it?
I think when we look at legacy, you got to look at what has been done good, bad, and indifferent. You got to take the whole apple. You can't just slice it up and say, okay, let's focus on the positives. And that's why I think the society wants the Department of Education to focus on now are the parts that make them seem positive instead of looking at it in totality. So I think when you look at legacy has to be something that I can I can sit down and give to my children. I can speak to my grandchildren. I can tell them about the great things that this group of people has done during this time. I think when you speak legacy, it's something you can hold on to so that you can see it and say, "Man, I can do this." Instead of saying, "Okay, we marched and got beat and all this other stuff." But what if my legacy is mere marching quietly and still not getting where I'm trying to get to? I think I will still be in that humble submission posture instead of me saying, "Man, Nat Turner, his legacy is that he fought till the end. He was demanding of his rights, and he fought for those things." I think learning who you are and not having this whole cultural sensitivity to force I don't have to force other people to learn about me. I think that's where people steer wrong. I think that we shouldn't pigeonhole us, though. I think that speaking it, uh, learning it, whether it's books or materials that you can find on any Amazon or any bookstore, some bookstores, but just learning about the people that you're trying to learn about so that you can pass it down to look at their achievements.
Um, I'm on one tonight. All right, so I was looking it up because I kind of went through a legacy rabbit hole sometimes last year, and then I stopped because I got stuck on something. And so I kind of looked up legacy, and it talked about a couple of different times. Talk about um, personal, professional, spiritual, moral, financial, material, and some part of this legacy thing, well, pretty much at the end of the day, it talks about things that you leave behind once you're gone. So my definition is pretty much things that you leave behind once you're gone, whether that be personal, professional, financial, whatever like this. So I honestly think here's where I got stuck. I I got stuck in the thought process thinking that legacy was egotistical, right? And here's why. Who gives a crap about, like, who do I think that I am so high and mighty that I need to leave this message behind to 3 or 4 generations down the road? I don't even know anybody or anything about anybody 4 generations ago. So why is me leaving a word or something like that important? And again, I am speaking from a place where this is where I got stuck in the process. So this is not an answer. This is more so my thought process of where I'm at in all of this, right? So it's like I understand the financial piece and the material piece, that legacy, leaving the house, leaving some financial stability for your generations and stuff like that. You know, maybe even professional. Maybe if you were a doctor and you did something and you wrote some great information on, you know, a certain type of surgery or technique that, you know, cut a certain amount of time out of a surgery. Those things I think are okay. But as far as a lot of other stuff, the personal stuff, I'm kind of stuck on it's kind of egotistical. And I don't really think that I really need to leave any legacy behind when it comes to those things. Again, like Coach always saying, we are subject matter expert of our own opinions and our thoughts. So I'm going to end with that.
So these conversations are always like bittersweet to me because it's like I hate being the bad guy, but I love saying the stuff that makes me the bad guy sometimes in these conversations. All right. Uh, but and not exactly what Onk said, right? But some of the stuff that I hear a lot, you know, kind of comes along the same lines as what Onk said, and I realize that that's a mindset that only exists in our culture, in our community. Like we start thinking a little backpedaling, right? Um, when it comes to the legacy conversation, but we forget the reason why we even use terms like systematic oppression or you know financial disparity is because we live in a system to where the wealthiest people we see is legacy. We think these people built these billion-dollar companies from the ground. No, it's legacy. Some of these companies made their money off the free labor. And the ones that look like they built from the ground came from the families that were given that were given reparations for losing their slaves because of emancipation. Or the ones that were given the grants to go take over the land that was supposed to be your 40 acres and a mule and then getting paid millions in subsidy a year not to farm in that land. Like so we live in a system to where legacy is there. It's just not in in our community, you know. And so for the scales to ever balance out, we have to I think we have to have a mind to where it's not like coach you Onk, my bad, I keep saying coach for Onk, you don't have to think 4 generations out, think 1 generation out. Just teach them how to think 1 generation out, and what you left behind will be left behind for 4 generations. Like these things like, and so when we looking at like uh defining legacy is either financial or impact. All right, that to me, that's how I look at it. Those are the two major uh, keys into legacy. You leaving back understanding of impact that your family has, or wealth left behind. Right. So so I think is important for us to see that we live in a society where legacy is already dominated. It's just we're not playing the same game. So we have to have something left for TJ. Has to have something to leave for whatever his son name's gonna be. That has to be my legacy. That has to be the legacy. They may not remember that it came from Tawami Gaddy Sr., that I made, that I started this wealth back wagon or whatever, but it still needs to be left behind, and for them to grow, and they need to be taught how to use it, how to grow it, so that it can continue to grow. So that's how I look. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Rhoda, you about to say something?
Yeah, because I think sometimes we may focus on material more when it comes to legacy. Because, like, I got this book here. It's the power, and you see who on the cover. It's a bunch of different us's. I think we can leave that. I still remember words from my great grandmother that she would instill in us, that she learned from previously, her grandmother, her mother, and so forth and so on. And when you have children, your words are going to come through your children's mouths to their children. And it's going to continue to be a cycle. That's why you shouldn't speak damning words to your children. You should speak uplifting words to them, not so they can be in some facade, but so that it can always instill in them, like, hey, I'm a Walker child. I'm a Gaddy baby. These are this. So I can't do that. I can't walk like that. I can't do these things. And then eventually you'll get out the car like Trey did on Minister. What's that? Boys in the Hood.
Why?
You better than that.
Why? Just why?
Just,
So now, yeah. So what you said is exactly where I was going. I'm agreeing with the financial aspects of it and all that other great stuff, but I'm also agreeing with the character development and the having the respect for your last name. And I think a lot of times what we don't do a lot is we don't necessarily help children to identify with their family to such a degree that the family teaches values, teaches certain things, teach the things that help them to develop. Like if you've obtained a understanding of a thing, I shouldn't make my child go through the same growing pains that I had to go through to gain that same understanding. I should be teaching my child through the lens of the understanding that I actually have. And so that can become problematic sometimes because a lot of times we leave our children to do the exact same level of growing that we did. However, I like, and I've seen it in the chat several times, like legacy to me is all about leaving an inheritance for my children's children. So, my children get the conversation, my children get the stuff. And so when I look at it from that perspective, like, do I believe they should want to hear what their granddaddy got to talk about? Sure, because I want to hear what mine had to talk about. And it's not to say that, granddaddy word is law, but granddaddy word for me when I was growing up was understanding. Granddaddy word for me when I was growing up was wisdom. I learned a lot when I listened to that man talk. And I think the same thing applies to us if we take the opportunity to open our mouth and talk and stop shoving them behind the TV or shoving a controller in their hand and things of that nature. So that's, in my opinion, that's how we start building it. We start spending quality time with our children's children, teaching them, right? Teaching them from the lens of our experiences and our understanding so that they don't have to go back and go through the same struggles that we did. Now, all that being said, it's not that the grandchildren, you know what I'm saying? It's not that the grandchildren won't get that continual teaching because ideally the parents should teach their own children. However, we also understand that we live in a world to where, well, people get mad at their grandparents. I'm sorry, people get mad at their parents because they won't take care of their grandkids. Me taking care of my grandchild is not my responsibility. Me coaching you to be a better parent is my responsibility. It's not that I don't want to spend time with my grandchild. I should want to spend time with my grandchild, not for you to go do blase, blase, flip. So that's a whole nother conversation within itself. So that's just kind of like my thoughts. Uncle, look, you got something you want to add, bro?
Yeah, I guess I just kind of want to add in the fact that, and we see it all the time on social media too. Like, we like to, I think sometimes we don't like to think that we are omitted from being part of the programming. right? I think we automatically say that, this generation or these people have been programmed, but a lot of times if you look, some of us have some programming in us as well. And I think that it's just it's part of it. You know what I mean? And I think that that's why it's so important that we spend time trying to understand who we are and trying to become better and growing and being open-minded about certain things, because sometimes we say things and we think we have a great argument, but at the end of the day it's just programming. At the end of it's just programming, but some people are not able to always recognize when they have been programmed. So I just kind of wanted to share that out there. I'm not saying anybody on here, I'm just speaking in general as something that we should be aware of as well.
And you said one thing that was wrong though. You said some of us. It's all of us.
There you go then.
That's a fact. That is a known fact. Only thing you're doing is you rewrite the code from one program to another. That's all it is. So yeah, absolutely. Gaddy, had anything you want to add, bro? Look like you was leaning in.
Yeah, just to the point that you and Roland was making. Did one of my favorite scriptures a few years back that I used to love to quote to myself, so that never get caught up in certain riffraff, was Proverbs 22:1, and it tells us that a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, right? And love and favor rather than silver and gold. So when we talk about it, that's why I preference impact, uh, and then the other side is wealth. Because y'all are absolutely correct. That that name in itself is a legacy, and what you teach and what you instill into the next generation, into their minds, is a part of that legacy, is a part of that name. So
Time for my lead corso. Not so fast, my friend. It's not that you're wrong. There's a caveat to that as well. We have a responsibility to make that name honorable as well. So it's not just me passing a name on to my children or my grandchildren. It's also that the name itself is honorable because of the character that we carry who owns that name. So I just want to inject that other piece in there to go along with it. Yes, sir.
So when you talk a name, are you speaking literally or figuratively?
Yes.
I about to say, however you take it,
have kind of sort of been given to me, and
Mhm.
that's why I was asking. I like the answer though.
say again.
That's why I said yes.
No, because I mean, you think about it, most of us, this is not our original name.
Oh
Most
yeah,
of us last names were given to us. So that's why I was asking, were you speaking literally or figuratively when we were talking about the name? And I'm glad
I
because it came back up again. Because I
Mhm.
wanted to ask before, and then we moved, and then it came back up again. So it got me the opportunity to ask again. So I really like the answer, yes.
Yes, that's the answer.
see. I agree with what you say, and I hear it all the time, and I don't disagree with everything that comes behind that conversation. But when I hear, and I understand what people say, but when I hear Gaddy, for me, for my generation, it's what Timothy Gaddy left behind. All right. The reason why I adopted the name when y'all called me son of Timothy, because that's my daddy's name. You know, so Timothy Gaddy means something. I don't learn how to be a man. I don't see a man walk like a man. I don't know what masculinity looks like if it's not for Timothy. You get what I'm saying? So I understand where the name came from. I understand that it's not rooted too far back into our history. But I know for me, when we say that we are Gaddy kids, right? People, and where I grew up, people knew what T kids did and what they didn't do. But And I think that's the point of it when we talk about the name. It's like Coach says, it's what comes with that. What is that name standing on? It's standing on character. It's standing on belief in the Most High. It's standing, not just tangible, but it stands on something that I can carry.
But I think every one of us up here has been called various names over time. To some people, we still Sarge. To some people, when I go back home, I'm Roro, whatever, Lil Ro, or Junior, or whatever. So at various times in your life, you've acted certain ways, being called certain names. And do you continue to stay in that immature state, or do you grow? So your name means something. So when I go home, and they still gonna call me what they gonna call me, but am I still acting like that young boy that was doing those things back then, or am I gonna grow to a point where I say, man, Roro, he grew, he's mature now, he's this, that, and other, because they ain't gonna change. Old people ain't gonna change what they call you. I don't care what you tell them, they gonna still call you what they call you. And so when that name means something, so it may not, some people call me Walker, military, while other people call me my first name. We've had various names. So the name means something depending on your surroundings.
So I get it. You still a Roro. Okay, moving along. What are some common limiting beliefs that hold people back from realizing their potential? And how can we reframe those images? Now, remember the topic that we're talking about, everything that we just talked about leading up to this point. So, what are some common limiting beliefs that hold people back from realizing their potential? And how can we reframe those thoughts?
Okay. I think the way we look at how our forefathers, how they chose to move ahead, sometimes we say, well, I wouldn't have took that. Or we have a negative outlook on their contributions to where we are today. I think that limits us, because if you aren't moving forward and all you're doing is talking about what they did negatively, it's not enhancing you in any fashion. So I think that's one of the ways, the way we view our forefathers and what they did or didn't do to try to achieve a level of freedom when it comes to this whole Black history thing. I think that's what I'll start with.
That my inability to make something happen is dependent upon someone else's lawmaking or someone else's policy writing or someone being voted into office, when really the limitation is put on us because we believe that we have to make something happen by ourselves all the time. I was having that conversation earlier with someone. We always talk about, we can never come together because we're in competition with each other in almost everything we do. Why can't we build together? Why can't we, this is, I can't wait to see what comes of it. But there were a few families in Georgia that got together and like, put together their wealth. I think they came up with, I can't remember how much money they came up with, but they came up with a lot of money. And they bought a whole bunch of land, and they turning it into their own community, into their own city, right? But that shows whether or not that becomes anything. That shows that the togetherness, they realized that there was power in their money when they came together. And that's the same thing that Peter did when they got done preaching on the day of Pentecost, right? Everyone came, all those who believed came together, sold everything, bought that money together, and it spread it out, right? That's how a community was built. And I think sometimes we look at what has happened in history, even when we progressed as communities, and we say, well, that's why we can't do it. Well, I think the only time you lose that battle is when you stop. Uh, and I hope that don't sound as if I'm disagreeing with what Rose said when we talk about how our ancestors did, but they had to survive so that we can survive. But they did that so that we can survive and we can get back to it. But somewhere along the line, we looked at it and we said, and we threw up our hands and surrendered. And I'm just talking about as a whole, So how can we get back to it? We just got to get we it's a process, but we have to recognize those who were skilled to lead around us and build them up to lead and get behind what it is that we agree to do. That's all I got.
You kind of lost me a little bit, so let me kind of back up. I think what Roland was saying is that the limiting beliefs is rooted in dependency, depending upon somebody else to do a thing in order for me to be able to do a thing. I want to make sure that I clearly understand what you're saying the limiting belief is here.
So it was kind of what I started with. Like, I think a lot of people in our community believe that we have to wait on someone to be voted in. We have to wait on policies to be made before we can begin to make something happen in our own lives or in
Okay,
our
got it.
community.
So same thing that Roland was saying there. Okay, I got you. Unc, what you got?
I got a different one. And I'm gonna go with something that we probably hear all the time. I have to work twice as hard just to be respected. Now, even before this, I want to say this. Just be you can have a limiting belief, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's true or false. It's just your belief, right? So just because you believe something, it doesn't make it as true, but it doesn't make it false either, right? So I think that's something I've heard all the time. I have to work twice as hard. And like I said, that may be true or it may not be true. It depends on your situation. You looking at three brothers up here or four brothers who may have had it hard or may not have had it hard. Maybe they had to work twice as hard. Maybe they didn't. If you talk to all four of us, we probably have some similarities, but also some differences in our stories when it comes to this topic. I think that that's something that we hear all the time. And I think a way that we can rephrase that is by saying, you know what? I'm unique and I'm excellent or whatever you want to be. And I can move in every space that I go in. You know what I'm saying? So it's how you go into the situation. I think that can determine a lot of these thoughts. Limiting beliefs, as nothing more. You can get rid of them with just, as simple as mindset. In theory, it's as simple as mindset because that's all it is, a limiting belief, because that is something that can be adjusted and changed. So if you adjust and change how you think about something, it may change your outcomes.
Yeah, I'm definitely there where I'm with you. I think another limiting belief kind of stems back from what we were talking about previously. Because if I don't have anybody in my family that has done anything significant, then sometimes because I don't have that model that I can associate with, therefore I don't feel empowered to do anything significant. And that kind of, and I don't think we struggle with that as much today as we used to, right? But I think because of the family lineage, because of the family name, and things of that nature, we kind of limit ourselves because of that. And then eventually we get to the point where we say, well, this is the first person to do this. This is the first person in our family to do that, right? So needing to be associated with a thing in order to feel empowered that I can do a thing is a limitation, a huge limitation within itself. I will also say, and this is going to be a very unpopular statement, especially going into Black History Month, this is my ceiling. When I look at my skin and think that my skin is my ceiling, whatever that is I perceive, then that could be a limitation within itself. I always say, and I know people don't like it when I say it, but that's fine. I don't say it for them to like it. I say it for them to consider. This is the vehicle that I'm traveling in. The true person is inside the vehicle. Don't let the vehicle fool you to believe that this is all I am. Because if you really get to know the person inside the skin, the person that you see on the outside of the skin can be more of a blessing to you. And I think again, a lot of our limitations. So that's a funky space for us to be in, right? Wanting to be acknowledged, wanting to be represented, wanting to be, accepted because of the color of our skin, but then getting to the point to where I realize that I am not my skin. I am the person within the skin. The skin is the vehicle. So the way that we can reframe that is getting the right mental posture of all of those. I don't necessarily need a family role model to do what I'm called to do. I don't necessarily need to be accepted, validated because of what I look like on the outside, because it's who I am on the inside that actually matters. I think all of those things can become problematic, and you see it continuously. I seen it when I was a little boy. I'm still seeing it today as a grown man. Come on, Ro. I know you about to say something, man. Come on with it.
I like how you brought that out because it made me think of how when I would go home, like my cousin would be like, "Oh, you a good grandfather, you a good father," and I'm thinking, I'm just a father. I'm just a grandfather. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But to them, it's like I'm going extra. I'm going above and beyond. No, see, I think discipline is one of those things we need to not just add in our vocabulary, but add in our lives. That's everybody as a whole. Because when you discipline yourself when it comes to reading, when it comes to study, when it comes to whatever, then you can become more. I didn't see the example, but I became it because I'm like, hold up, I know this ain't working what I'm doing. So I had to become something else.
I like it. I like it. Daddy, you got it over there? Okay, just just wanting to make sure. Um, I think I want to go. Yeah, let's move on to this. I think we still got a little bit of time where I can keep pressing. So, where am I at? How can cultivating a future focused mindset, kind of like what we were talking about just now, how can cultivating a future focused mindset change the way we approach our goals and relationships with one another? And again, keeping in mind the focus of today's conversation.
I think I was going to jump out there and then you talked about focus on today's conversation. So
Well,
let
no,
me get a second.
say what you want to say. It's fine.
Nah. So, well, I guess this may is so cultivating a future focused mindset. I know more about me than most people. You know, part of my journey right now is future focused. As being 49, as being in a family where we haven't had any men to make it outside of the 60s. I want to be around here for my three sons and for my wife. So, because I have this future focused mindset, the way that I approach my goals and my relationships are a lot different. I am focused, and part of my goals is on my health, it's on my financial stability, and it's also focused on my relationships. I'm 49 years old. I'm pretty okay, and I've came to the understanding and the realization that I'm halfway, at least halfway done. I'm probably halfway done. You know what I'm saying? More than likely. At 49, they would put me at 98. I haven't met any men in my family that's made it to, like I said, all of their 60s for whatever reason. Um, and the average American don't live that long. Good, bad, or indifferent. If I'm gonna live that long, I will. But the more than likely I won't. So my future focused mindset causes me to focus on those things and put my goals and my priorities in a different aspect. If I didn't care about my health and if I wasn't future focused, then that would definitely change how I approach life. I would probably be more focused on taking care of today, and what I have to do today and next week and next month, not necessarily 15, 20, 25 years down the road after you are gone. So I do think that, because I am black, You know what I mean? This may fall into the category of shaping my Black history. And, you know, where I am at today is my great, great, great grandson's history. So who I am today, I will be part of their history at some point. So I guess it do kind of circle back around at the end of the day.
How can cultivating a future focused mindset change? I think whenever you trying to move forward, you can't continue to just you can't focus on behind, but you can reference what's behind. I think that's why I always say you have to show those that you're trying to move forward various things. You gotta allow them to see various sides of life. Show, you know, because if all they know are the four corners that they are within, they think, hey, this is as far as I can go. But when they explore trips, when they explore museums, when they explore musical, uh, whatever it is, the theater, the arts, and everything else, it opens their mind to think outside of the normal box. And that's why I think we gotta make sure that we allow people that we trying to move forward to think outside of the normal box, because that mindset that we have that's not focused on futuristic things, it probably was never shown futuristic things that they could accomplish. So I think explore different avenues and show various things, and they can have various outcomes.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because it's easy to get lost in the past and live through the lens of what happened in the past. But I think it's important to understand that you can't that you should not erase the past, because there's also there's a lot of encouragement there. And so and and I
We
got
go
you. I got,
future focus, baby.
no, I got you.
I'm joking, bro. I'm
No,
joking.
no, because when I look at it, right? 'Cause I think what the issue is, because we never truly properly address certain things to in order to move forward. You know, at least in as a nation here, right? Um, it's like we dance around one point, or we ignore, or we try to force. But the reality is, for me, when I look at the past, I realize the strength that is in us, right? The strength that our ancestors have shown, that allows us to be able to move forward regardless of what happens in the future. We have the strength to move forward. We have the capability of withstanding whatever comes at us as we move towards this future. And the stuff that we're trying to do and that we're trying to build, we have not suffered what has been suffered, the amount of things that they have suffered in the past. So if they were strong enough to walk through it, to be focused into the future, you have to understand that strength that walks with you, that strength that's built inside of you. And so for me, uh it's not a forget the past in order to be future focused, but it's to understand what was passed down to you. And that's the strength. That's the strength of our people. And so take that with you, because in every walk we have tests, we have trials, we have uh, roadblocks, but we can make it and we can move forward. So if we look at it from that lens versus woe is me, I think the future looks a lot brighter.
Yeah, I get that. And that's man, I wanna I'm a stay focused here. I want I want to say this, and then I'm gonna move forward. I think that's something that that's kind of like that programming thing that Garfield was talking about. Like I think it has been for years. We've talked about how strong we are as a people, um, but to be strong just because I have to be strong is like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's almost as though when we and again, this is not shooting at what you're saying, Gad. I'm just addressing it because I've heard it like for eons. Like being strong because we have to be strong is a thing. But then it's like because we had to be strong, that's the thing we hang our hat on because we're strong. But if there was no choice in it, is that like a thing to where it becomes a badge of courage? Like I don't think anybody, regardless of what culture you go to, I don't think any of them lacks strength. That's kind of like my point. So again, not shooting down what you're saying, but just for me, it's just like I don't know. It just kind of it's just one of those things. But for cultivating a future mindset, in my mind, I look at it like it's important to understand the past so that we can build from it moving towards the future. I think sometimes what we do is we hibernate in the past, sometimes too much, or only touch it in February or whatever. Like, understand the past, learn the lessons that we can learn from the past so we can apply those lessons in the future. And then progressively over time, the past tends to rewrite itself because we continue to keep moving forward. But what I do witness a lot of is that we just keep rehashing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Therefore, if we never extract those lessons, what did we learn about it? What did we learn from it? Like I'm going to go back to what Roland mentioned about the "I Have a Dream" speech. Great speech, don't get me wrong. But what is the lesson that we learned from the speech? What is the lesson that we learned from the what from the time that led up to the speech? What is the lesson that you learn from civil rights? Not necessarily continuing to celebrate civil rights, right? Um, and that's kind of like what I'm saying. Like it's if we're going to reflect on the past, we have to reflect on the past with intention, and that intention is to extract the lessons, and then we collectively understand how we apply those lessons now moving forward, and then our children or our children's children, when they reflect on the past, sure, they go all the way back to where we came from, right? I have a dream and all that other great stuff. But part of that development, that growth that they're getting, should be reflecting on our past because that information is passed down from generation to generation to generations. Like the conversations, like when I talk with, Granddad and Uncle Junior, when I talk to Granddaddy Roland, like these are some of the great things that they taught us. When I talk to Granddaddy Gaddy, these are some of the things that they taught us. Like I think that's important, so we should have our own family history that propels us forward, as well as cultural history that propels us forward. And now we start looking at the history of the land within itself. So that's just kind of like how I look at it. Because again, I, I struggle when I hear people focus on history, 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 history. But what I've seen is that people who say history, 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 history are some of the angriest people that you ever want to be around. But I wonder why they're angry when the only thing they're pouring in is historical data, which doesn't paint you as a good person. It paints you as a whipping boy for somebody else. So that's kind of like my point. Don't just stay there and focus on it to where it permeates your mind and puts you in a particular place. Like get it, extract it, apply it, move forward.
I'm only going to bring this up because you kind of went back to the past about Black history and different things like this. But there seems to be not necessarily some pushback, but I'm sensing, even through some of the chat as we've been through the show, that there may be a little hesitancy to having Black History Month. So I would like to know from whoever, if not Black History Month, what would it look like? What would you be okay with? What are you comfortable with? If we're not, and I don't know the history behind why Black History Month was started. Like I said, I'm not versed in this particular genre of information at all. And we've shared before on this podcast different reasons why, and I understand that. So, but I like to have understanding, when people say, well, I don't want to just, don't just give us something 1 month. Okay, well, what is it that you do want? What would it look like to you if it's not Black History Month or any other way that it's been currently done? What would you like it to look like? And I'm not just curriculum in the schools. And this is for anybody, and even in the chat.
I think for me, that's curriculum for the schools. That's for, if I'm a person and I can fix my mouth to say I don't want something, I have to be able to replace it. I have to be able to articulate exactly what I want to occur. So when it comes to me, I'm not looking forward to it with the speeches, and every year they might show Roots on PBS or something like that. And I'm not looking forward to that. But what I do is I read other things and I want to teach those things. I want to illuminate those highlights, not just that, okay, this happened at this period of time. And if I'm not willing to put any legwork in, I can't complain about what is there. So,
but even I'm not even saying that he's even in a complaint. I understand people have perspective and things they want. I want certain things too, but it don't mean I'm willing to put forth the effort to do it. Let's be honest. We got priorities, man, and I can't have my finger in every hole. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I can only do so much. So are you saying kind of sort of that? If we have Black History Month or something like that, then maybe we're teaching something different than the traditional Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, these same things. Is that what you're saying or not?
definitely. I think last year, Coach had us, we came with a person or people, that were instrumental in our eyes of, of our color. And that's something that adds to what's there. I don't think you take away from that. You add to what's already there and build upon it. So you say, man, we used to do that, but look at us now. And you just keep building.
Got anything, anybody? That's fine.
I do. I'm torn. I'm
Come on,
torn.
Yeah.
I'm torn. I'll tell you why. I would start off by saying history is history, right? My need to identify it based upon my heritage shows a couple of things. Number one, it hadn't been properly represented. So now I feel like I need to make it about my heritage. That's for starters. So let's fix that problem. Let's make it properly represented throughout and make it a part of history to where no one has to single out different ethnic groups and heritage and label that type of history. You understand what I'm saying? Like if it's properly represented throughout history, then no one feels rejected or neglected so that we have to isolate one, like you said in the beginning, the shortest month of the year so that we can celebrate your history, but yet you still got a whole 320 some days left, right? So that's where I will start, but that's why I say I'm torn because on the other hand, I do recognize the need because of what I just said to celebrate ethnic history. So it's like a perpetual self-licking ice cream cone because this didn't happen. There's a necessity for this. But then when this becomes necessitative, now it kind of implies that the other 11 months we don't worry about Black history. So that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm torn in it. What would I like it to be? I would like it to be properly represented throughout the entirety of time, where it's not just a month; it is the entirety of the year. So if we're celebrating these people, we're celebrating all people, right? Because I don't care what it is, and that was the main reason, like what Roland talked about, why I wanted to talk about different people, different aspects of Black history when we did it last year. Because at the end of the day, there's a wealth of history that can be talked about, but we don't talk about it. We can talk about it from the aspects of performing arts. We can talk about it from the aspects of like even just the movie scene, like this young lady right here, right? Like her and Sidney Poitier is a great people to talk about when it comes down to movies, when it comes down to the big screen, and some of the challenges that they did. But we don't necessarily do that. We, like, Roland said, we just keep talking about the same thing over and over again. So if we're gonna do it, let's do it properly to where we kind of address it all the way across the board, and let's just not isolate it to a month. Let's do it the entire year.
And and see, that's where I have another clarifying question. So we have, we have African American History Month, Asian Pacific Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Native American Month, Heritage Month, LGBTQ Pride Month. So what if all one of them are everybody saying the same thing? We don't want to be represented just one. We want to be represented all year. You see, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. If everybody, every ethnic group or every minority group or whatever says that, hey, let's do it the whole year. Well, there's so many different groups out there. How do we accommodate everybody?
I
That's not
think they mostly took disenfranchised groups and jammed them together and gave them additional, because when you talk about Europeans, European history is taught all year. European history is taught a lot. So what they did is they took select groups. Like when you talk about Asians, remember the Asians, Chinese, I'll say, came over in the 1700s, and then what they put those same Chinese people, they had them in. I always call them concentration camps because that's what they had them in. They had them in concentration camps, and all those people that you speak of are people that, remember, they made laws about these people. So when they make laws, like the reason you can't smoke marijuana is because of, black people. Reason opium became illegal is because of Chinese, because of the fear and so forth and so on. So they couldn't just take say, okay, the Italians, the Polish, the this, and you had to make a dent in the impact of building America.
and to your question, that's not. I don't mean to sound disingenuous when I say that, but that's not a us problem. We fell in on this problem. Like when you decided that you wanted to make a melting pot society, the implication behind that is that you was going to take care of everything in the pot. If you're not going to season the whole pot, then why did you decide to make a pot? And put all kind of different aspects in that pot. So that's what I'm saying. Like, the problem that stems from that, I don't think that's something that each individual culture's responsibility is to figure out for everyone else. I think it's each individual culture responsibility to, and I hate to use this word, but to demand representation in the entirety of history, and let the powers that be that created the melting pot society to figure out how to do that. That's why they're called governance.
I think the only reason why we even have this conversation at this level, because I go to intent, right? When we say, hey, why did you create this melting pot society if you wasn't going to season all parts of the pot? Well, because the idea was for you to come here for each culture to come and bring what they could bring to make this a great country so that they can become the aristocrats of this new land, because they weren't the aristocrats of where they came from. Right? They 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 built this society for them to build off of. They got away from the crown so that they can build their own legacies. Right? And so I think we just have to be honest. The intent was never for you to be fully appreciated in the history or in the idea of this land or of this nation. To be a part of building it, but the level of appreciation that we're expecting to have, I think only way you can get that year round. That's why everybody has a month. Here you go, I'll give you a month, now shut up and get back to work, right? But if that's the case, then I go back to, we got to be willing to build together. Like, you can't say recognize me in the space of the NFL and you don't own no team. You ain't got no stake in the game, right? You here for entertainment purposes only. And I hate to say it like that, but you know, so we just have to be real with where we are so that we can get to the point to where we realize, kind of like what Coach said, that at some point it becomes our responsibility to make sure that that we're never not recognized, we're never not spoken of. You can't forget, so that you don't let others forget what your contribution is to to this place. If the history is, and this was brought up earlier, if the history becomes lost, it becomes lost because we allowed it. There's certain cultures in this country that ain't gonna allow it. You ain't gonna lose their history because they control their own history. They teach their own children. You go, I tell people all the time, man. I went to school in Chinatown because we stayed in a shelter close to Chinatown, so I zoned there. All them teachers, Chinese. All their store owners, Chinese. The police officers that was walking around their community, Chinese. They made a voice and they made something happen, and they started putting nothing but Asian police officers in that community. Not nothing but as many as they could. But you get what I'm saying? Like, because their voice was heard, it was united and it was loud. They didn't let people forget about them. So you just go back to the point made earlier. At some point, you got to be willing to be united and loud. Don't forget. Don't let people forget.
Yes, sir. All right. I think we got time for one more question. You guys, please be patient with us because I want to get to the action step. I want each of us to identify one actionable step that I and the first person can take today to start driving change in our communities.
I'll go first on this one. Work on yourself. I think there's nothing more important than being a positive person or being, I don't want to say a role model, but being a positive representation of what you want your culture or your blackness or your black history or whatever it is to look like, whatever you identify as. I think that, we a lot of times look at everybody else to make changes and to make adjustments in our community. And I think that starts with adjusting and taking care of the community within ourselves. Are you an upstanding person of your own community? Are you a bad representation of your community? So I think for me, one actionable step is that you start looking in the mirror and taking care of that person and making sure that that person is an upstanding, positive representation of your culture.
I think for me, one actionable step would be to be the patriarch of my family, like to take the responsibility. And when it comes to history, when it comes to making sure things happen, when it comes to speaking sense to situations and being the voice of reason within my family, I think being the example of what a stand-up gentleman should be within my family, I'll start there and hopefully spread throughout when they grow up, when they continue to move forward, so that they'll see an example of what it should look like here or what it does look like here and think, okay, that's proper. Yeah, that's mine.
Oh, change that I can take today to start driving change in communities. And I think I don't think it's too many. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think there's too many different answers to it. You know, because I'm right there with what was been said. And, so for me, it's just it's always been a community void of fathers when I was growing up. So my major thing was to be that, to be a father, to show up, to be available, and that's why that became my mantra, because I was like, what represents what I want to be more than anything, other than a follower of the Most High, is I want to be available as a father, as a husband, as a teacher, as a whatever I have to be to my family, to my community. I want to be that and be available there. And I want to teach other young men growing up how to be the same thing if I can. So and I think anything when we start talking about change, it all starts with just one at a time. You make the change in you, and then you teach someone else how to continue it on, how to do it.
Yeah, I like all of that. I think our lives um teach us some things as we tend to progress. And I think that's intentional. Um I think that is intentional by design so that when you reflect back over your life, you realize the gaps and the open spaces and things and so forth and so on. And for me, when I reflect back over my life, I wish that there was at least some man. I mean, I had the Uncle Brigade, right? But at least there was some man that was willing to pour into me and help me progress at a more accelerated rate. Like teaching, sure, I was a knucklehead at a certain point. I think all boys go through that at a certain stage, right? But some man that would pour into me and look out for me because he viewed me as son-like, not necessarily my son, right? But he viewed me as son-like. I think that's it. That's it for me. Like I have the desire to mentor young men. It's just something that I don't know what it is. It just feels natural for me. Even when I'm in the classroom teaching, I'll find eventually one or two will like make their way to me, and we have like great conversation. And so for that, I think for me, that stems back when I reflect back over my life, which was the reason why we started this podcast, because this would have been great if we had this type of resource back then. And so as we listen to the responses from all of these men on this platform, I think everybody can search themselves and ask themselves that one glaring question, like, what can I do to help our community so that we can progress as a community? There's too much competition as a community I see right now. And I'm sure I'm not the only person to see it. As you look at these men nod their head left, up, and down, I'm sure everybody's in the chat probably doing the exact same thing. If we eliminate the competition and increase in collaboration, I think we will actually find ourselves progressing collectively. And even though in some aspect of it, somebody may feel or think that we're marginalized, but I think when we start collaborating, we'll realize that we're not as marginalized as we think we are. We just, in some, I don't know, in some, for some strange reason, we just struggle just uniting and coming together. So that being said, I don't think we're going to do final thoughts. I think what you guys said just now was enough. I think that was a great place to end. So I thank you guys for that. I thank everybody in the chat. You guys are awesome. I mean, such great value that you guys are adding. And again, this is what we believe, and I stress that part. This is what we believe um, can happen in our culture if we just pull together and collaborate. And I know all of you who are listening, I know that you can participate. I know that you can add your own stories to it, your own value, your own skills and techniques. So let's do that. And let's not let it end at the end of February. Let's continue that throughout the year. Let's collaborate throughout the entirety of 2025 and see how much value we can add to our community. So that being said, listen, you guys have a great rest of your evening. Have an awesome night, and let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else.